Hi, this is Chris Ritter. I'd like to welcome you to the premiere episode of the Gospel Spirit Mission podcast. This is a forum for us to tell some stories and to have some conversation in our Kingswood Church family here in Geneseo, Illinois. So we have Lonnie Couture behind the camera today. He's our producer for this. We appreciate his work. But in front of the camera today, we've got Whitney Fahner, who is our director of worship. And Whitney, you are no stranger to our church family. In fact, you were in the pulpit this very weekend, prior weekend,
Yeah.
bringing a great word on how prayer helps our mental health and works with our mental health. So I've been looking forward to sitting down with you because I think a lot of people may not know your story. So let's just tell us your life story.
The whole life story. Here we
just a
go.
little bit, if you would, please. Yeah.
Wrapped up in a short chunk of time, right? I grew up a pastor's daughter. My dad was an Assemblies of God minister, so that's a Pentecostal denomination. And we moved around a lot until I was about 7. And then we landed in Peoria, Illinois, and my parents are still there. So I lived in Peoria from 7 to about 18. And then at that point, I decided I wanted to be one of those people who moved away for college. So everybody in my family had gone to Evangel, which is an Assemblies of God school in Missouri. Yep, that's where my dad played football, or my brother used to coach football. And I was like, I want to be different. So I went to North Central Bible College up in Minneapolis. And there I got a bachelor's in theater. But when you go to a Bible college, you basically have to get a minor in biblical studies.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it's just a part of the requirement. So, you do all of the New Testament survey, Old Testament survey, hermeneutics, like exegesis, like you're required to do all the
All
things.
this stuff.
Yeah. Um, yeah. So that's kind of like how I grew up. And then the thing that I think kind of propelled me in terms of like teaching and ministry after that was I had a professor who said something to me that was really kind of harsh. He was like, because I was studying to be an actor and to work as an actor. And he was like, Whitney, I don't know if you can do this and be a Christian. And I was like, I'm sorry, what?
Mm.
I was like, what is he talking about? Um, and so I was like, Lord, I got some questions. I want to know more about like who I am as an artist and what that means in terms of my faith. And so that led me to look for an educational program that would allow me to like figure out some of that stuff or uncover some of that stuff. And most of the programs are actually based on music. So there is a ton of universities that have programs that are about music and theology. But there's not a lot of, or at least back in the early aughts when I was looking, there wasn't a lot of room for other conversations with art, except for the University of St. Andrews had their College of Divinity, which is called St. Mary's, had a Institute for Imagination, Theology, and the Arts. And I was like, what is that?
This is Scotland. You're saying University of St. Andrews.
St. Andrews, the golf place.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't golf. Do you like golfing?
I'm a horrible golfer. Last time I golfed, I hit a 10-year-old kid who was sitting in the golf cart.
Oh,
Hanging up my clubs. Yeah, it's been years. I like being out there though.
yeah, I played putt-putt at the old course.
Yeah, I can putt, I can do that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Got great golfers in our church. But Scotland, that's a whole different vibe. That's a pretty big step for a young woman to take, coming out of your bachelor degree. Did you get right into the master's?
Yes, sort of. So, my junior year, I did an internship in London, again, with a program that was really based on trying to understand the arts and trying to understand faith. And so it was at a particular church in Croydon, which is which is a southern suburb of London, and it's a little rougher. Croydon is. It's not known as like a nice area.
Not heard of that neighborhood.
Well, yeah. So I lived at an old vicarage though. So from like,
vicarage.
yes, from the, I want to say it was, it's London. So it's been around for a real long time. And it was just a crazy place to be living, but it was super fun. And I enjoyed that. So I knew I wanted to try to continue to expand my international horizons. So that also really helped. But I've been traveling since I was 16. So when I was 16, first time I ever left the country, I went to India on a 2-month mission trip without my family.
2 months in India as a 16-year-old, that's a big adventure.
Yeah, I asked my mom, I was like, "Why did you let me do that?" Like, I was like,
Now, as a mother, you're looking back on
yes.
this.
I was like, "Oh my gosh, my control issues." I'm like, "I drop you off at school and sometimes I have a moment, you know?" And it was back in the 90s, so there was I mean, she might have been able to email me if I made it to an email cafe, but it was like writing letters and hoping that they got there in time, So yeah, and then the next year, the summer of my senior year, so after I finished high school, I went to Nepal for a month, and did mission work there. So I had always had this draw, right? Like even when I was younger, one of the things that I love about the assemblies is that they're so mission minded. And actually, the Assemblies of God is bigger outside the United States than it is in the United States. And so we grew up with like mission conferences once a year. And I loved those because missionaries would come in and would talk about the country they were serving.
All these far-flung parts of the world.
Yes. Yes. Which is what I also loved hearing about what you and Lonnie were doing in Africa and what our other missionary partners do. Like that's always going to be super integral, important to me. So this idea of going somewhere for the gospel I was like, this is just what you
It's
do.
in your DNA.
Yeah, this is just what you do. So being in St. Andrews is beautiful, right? Like it's idyllic.
So people don't realize this is a big deal school. I mean, that's
Yeah.
like if like in pastor world, if you've got a Master of Divinity, which I believe is a degree you got,
Mhm.
University of St. Andrews, that's a very prestigious. It's a great school, right?
Yes, like I think I don't know what other American schools are kind of up there for divinity in terms of academia. We're not talking about like religious, like pastoralship, but for academia, what would that be like?
Yeah, all the Ivy League Duke certainly has that reputation, but all the Ivy League started as divinity schools. Like Yale and Harvard and and Princeton. They all started to train pastors, and then they got into other things. Yeah, that it's one of the top. Bob Phillips, who's a friend, who's been to preach at Kingswood. He's he has a degree from St. Andrews.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's fun to find those people. Like the first time I preached this year when I was talking about song and how that kind of is important for reiterating gospel and reiterating truth to ourselves. I realized the book that I was reading was actually written by a St. Andrews grad who had graduated after me, and she lives just across the pond in Iowa.
Oh.
So, or the river rather, right?
Yeah.
And so we started emailing back and forth. She was about to have a baby, so I haven't been able to like meet up with her. But I was like, it would be really fun to like
Yeah.
get
Great connection.
get together, talk. Yeah, and that's what she does. She's still worship director. Her husband's a pastor over there. Um, so I don't know, that was fun. But St. Andrews was also hard. I would have to say, in terms of trying to understand my faith, it was probably the hardest landscape I maybe have ever been in.
Yeah. Scotland's extremely secular,
Uh-huh.
and yeah, so I imagine that you're
Yeah.
different faith vibe in all of Europe, but especially in Scotland.
Yes. I mean, one, it's switching gears. It's going into the Presbyterian seat, so that's a whole different set of history and, process and thought. And then we also have the real rigorous academic mindset. So when they're coming to the word or when they're looking at theologians, like sometimes the heart's not there. Sometimes it is, depending on the professor, but like sometimes it's about something else.
You're not in the Assembly of God Bible College
Oh, no.
vibe anymore.
No,
Yep.
not at all. And they have their own set of problems. But
Yeah.
but it was just different. And when we got there, because there was a bunch of Americans that were studying together, they basically told us, hey, since you're an American, you're not going to do well here. And we were like, what? It's because they were like, your education system didn't teach you to think. It just taught you to regurgitate answers. And I was like, oh. And to be fair, they weren't entirely wrong. It was hard. It was hard work.
Yeah.
It was good work, but it was hard work. So while I was there, I was even contemplating doing a PhD. And then I was taking a walk with my friend, Allison, and she's a a headhunter. Like that's what her background is in terms. And she was just doing the degree for fun. She was like, just, I wanted to come do something. And she looks at me and she goes, Whitney, how hard is it to find jobs as an actor? And I was like, oh, it's a rough go, like you gotta work at it so hard. And she's like, how hard do you think it would be to find a job that would pay you to compensate you for your loans as a PhD with theater and theology? And I was like, oh, you're right. And I, it. So instead, I took a teaching position actually back at North Central. They hired me after I finished my master's, and I went and I was a theater professor, an adjunct theater professor. But that never quite works out like you think it's going to. So that meant, working at a coffee shop, working at the school teaching classes, but then also running rehearsals for the show the school was doing, and then after that, going to my own rehearsals as an actor. So I call that, like, my era where I didn't sleep,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
There was very little sleep going on, and a lot of my friends were starting down that deconstructionist road.
I was wondering what St. Andrews did because that's kind of it's kind of the thing, right? People get into some of these academic faith programs and they question their faith and they,
Mhm.
because, just I think a lot of people think that seminary is where people that believe things go to believe those things harder. And that's not what seminary is at all. In fact, the kind of a joke is if you come out believing anything, it's like, because it's like, well, it looks at the Bible as, a historic document and why, and so you just, you get these explanations. Well, that's all it is. It's just that. And so
Mhm.
you lose the Holy Spirit in that,
Yeah,
in that narrative somehow. So a lot of people do have a faith crisis in seminary. It's not like reinforcing your faith. It's
yeah.
actually a really,
I fell in that camp. Not as hard as some other people, but, I mean, when people are smarter than you and they're saying things that sound right, and you're like, I don't I don't have a structure or an argument that I feel can go against you, so what do I do here? Because I still wanna believe this.
yeah.
Um, I don't know, so that kinda reminds me when I was starting high school, I remember having this thought process of, "Okay, I can do whatever I want in high school," in terms of, like, faith background, like, I can do what I want, but I knew I was gonna come back to Jesus. Like, I knew I was not gonna be able to leave him. So I was like, "So I guess I should just stick through this through high school," you know? Um, and and during my undergrad, there was a lot of church hurt stuff with my dad's church and with the assemblies in general, and that was really stinky. And, and a lot of people who get hurt by the church, they're like, "Well, I'm just gonna walk away." Like, and
We could do a whole episode on preacher kid,
yeah, yes,
that their experience of church is
yes,
different than everybody.
yeah.
The, the gaze, people, it's just a collective gaze of the church.
Uh-huh.
Okay, you're supposed to be this Christian kid.
Mhm.
It's the pressure of that.
Yeah, and the real struggle is, like, and this is a struggle for everybody, especially in our current climate. Like, it doesn't matter if people hurt you, and it doesn't matter if they have beliefs that are so contrary to your beliefs, you're supposed to love them, And so that took, like, 10 years for that to, like, heal and sink and get deeper in me. And I remember asking my mom when I was at St. Andrews, I was on a phone call with her, and I was like, "Aren't you worried for me?" I literally was like, "Aren't you concerned?" And she was like, "Whitney, are you still talking to Jesus?" And I was like, "Well, yeah." And she goes, "Then I'm not worried." And I was like, "What?" And she was
I
like,
love your mom. I love your mom, by the way. She's played piano. A lot of times when you've come and done some special music, she's your pianist
yes,
and everything, and she's come and helped even our finance team here because she's done church treasures.
uh-huh."
She's Shirley Drury. She's been a great shout out to Shirley. She's been I love her vibe, but she's I guess that's part of being a woman of faith. She's like, I'm gonna send my kids into these trusting that I put the good stuff in them to navigate.
Yeah, I don't know. And my mom has the same anxiety issues, like genetic anxiety issues that I have. And so I'm like, whoa, look at what Jesus can do. Like look how he can help a controlling mom who just wants to hold on and is can be fearful. And I'm speaking about myself too, and let her grow and let her kids grow. Like that's
And she's probably had a lot of confidence in you too. I mean, there's certain kids your age, this kid's gonna take over the world someday. They are charging, and you just got to give them some more leash here. Let them do their thing.
yeah, she did always say, she's like, I knew you were never gonna live near me when you grew up. And then now we do. This is the closest I've been to her.
They need to move to. I'm just officially saying they need to move to Geneseo.
Oh,
Love to have your dad's preached for us,
uh-huh.
and it was the Sunday I'm away, but I got to listen to it online, of course. So yeah, they just need to move to the city.
Mhm. But I think, part of loving them has also taught me that lesson that you can love broken people. Like I can look at my parents and I can see their flaws because they're humans and be like, I still genuinely love those guys. And I think we need way more of that in our society. Like you can see broken people or you can see people different than yourself and you go, oh, I still love that person. I don't know.
Man,
I think that's important.
I keep interrupting your narrative. So
Oh.
are we? So we're at. So you're adjunct
Yep.
faculty.
In Minneapolis, yeah, and so finally, like I said, my friends are going through a deconstruction thing, and I was, like, not on board. I've always been one of these people who was like, "I cannot pick and choose what I think about the Bible." I was like, "If I start doing that, then I'm such an all or nothing person. I'm either gonna throw it out or I'm gonna keep it all, but I'm not picking and choosing." So, um, I was like, "I need to escape, and I'm tired of being cold." I kept moving further north,
I've got a daughter in
Illinois,
Minneapolis. Yeah, so
Minneapolis,
that it's a whole
Wisconsin,
vibe back
further,
there. Yeah.
further north, even though it's, rainy cold. So like, anyway, so I was like, I'm done. But I didn't want to move back in with my parent, because that felt like a failure. And, still trying to work as an actor. I was like, I'm gonna move in with my grandparents. So I moved to Gulf Breeze, Florida, which is next to Pensacola.
It's a big change.
It is a it is a huge change, and, my family has been there on my mom's side for 200 years or more.
Hey,
Mhm.
okay.
Yep.
I didn't think anybody had been in Florida.
Oh,
I guess they're one of the few
yes,
originals.
the Broxons. The Broxons have been there a long time. So I went down there, and I made a bunch of bad choices, pastor. Yeah, I did, with the between, trying to do shows, eventually I found a church, but, like, I was doing whatever I wanted to do, and it was not good. It was not good. Um, and that came to a breaking point, and the Lord just helped me through that breaking point. Like, at the moment that it became very, very clear what was going on, I literally sat on a front lawn, because I was on a walk, and I felt like the Lord put this bubble around me and said, "This far and no farther." Like, I clearly heard and felt that. And so from that time on, it was a healing process, a healing process toward the church, a healing process in dealing with some of my own junk and my own issues, and allowing the Lord to go much deeper. And at that point, I was like, I can't continue to stay in Florida. Like, this is not going to be good for me.
Not a good environment.
No, and my grandparents are lovely. It had nothing to do with that. It was just some other things. So, I was like, well, where do I go now? Because I always knew I didn't want to live in New York and I didn't want to live in LA. I don't know if sometimes that was fear of, or if that was just I don't really like people that much. I
Yeah,
didn't know.
those are kind of the obvious choices. Someone wants to be an actor, though, is,
Absolutely, they are.
those are the big
Yes, and
markets.
I was like, that sounds terrible. I don't want to do that.
And you have Broadway level gifts in music and act,
Oh,
so
thank you.
yeah,
I
I could see I could see you starring in a Broadway show for sure.
I appreciate that. I don't know. I've always been really good at editing myself out. Does that make sense? Like before an audition or something, I would look at it from a director perspective and be like, I wouldn't pick me. And so I would go to the audition so bad. But anyway, so I went to a conference on Christians in film and media. It happened up in the Asheville area. And a lot of those folks were from Charlotte, North Carolina. And so I connected with some of those folks, I drove up there, helped with some indie film stuff. kind of met some of the people, and I was like, I think I'm going to try working here. And so I moved to Charlotte, and I worked as an actor, I think more in Charlotte than I did almost anywhere else. Like it was like always shows back to back to back to back. And it was there that two things were super profoundly like aware to me. One, I did the musical Evita,
Yep.
and I played Eva Peron.
Okay.
And
Big role.
it was a huge role. And I was like, oh, um, it's more fun to be in the ensemble sometimes than it is to carry the whole thing.
Yeah.
It's just exhausting, like it's just exhausting. So that was one of my revelations. And the other was I got connected with a 24/7 prayer room in Charlotte. They had a special place there. Like it was amazing. So, and that's part of what has inspired me in terms of like the prayer stations that we did on Good Friday and some of the other ideas I'd like to someday have here for
Yeah.
events or whatever. But it was this space that you could walk into that artists had cultivated where it was like just different compartments all throughout that were very aesthetically curated and would lead you to pray for certain things.
Yeah.
Right. And it was a huge like warehouse, and it was full. It was gorgeous. And as an artist and as someone who loves prayer, like it was super, super, super amazing. So anyway, I had a friend that had moved from Charlotte to Atlanta, and she was like, you need to move here because that's where all the film stuff was happening. And I was like, girl, I'm not moving again. Everyone thinks I'm crazy. Like as an adult, I have moved so much. They all think I'm like unstable. And she was like, no, you need to come here. And then anyway, so one day I was sitting in the prayer room, and there was a big map, and I just felt like the Lord drew an arrow to Atlanta. And I was like, seriously? Like what are we doing? I don't know anyone in Atlanta. Um, so I moved to Atlanta. I signed with an agent there. I started working on some TV shows and film set stuff, and I was teaching voice lessons. And I also connected with the Dream Center. Do you know about Dream Centers?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we
hmm
So for those in Geneseo, the New Life for Women Farm in between Geneseo and Cambridge is a wing of the Chicago Dream Center.
Okay.
So maybe a large Assembly of God church would have a
hmm
kind of a ministry outlet where they do a lot of social service and
Yeah.
other types of ministries, and that's what the Dream Center concept is.
Yes. So
Do I have that right?
yeah, yeah, and it's a training place for a lot of young people, like, so I connected with them and actually taught for them on prayer, and worship and then music. So I would teach there. And then I, met who was gonna become my husband. I didn't obviously know that when I first met him.
I wondered when Daryl was going to enter the picture
Yes.
here
Yep.
in Atlanta.
Yep.
So
We met online, actually.
everybody meets online these days. It used to be like a shady thing. Oh, we met online. But
No.
everybody.
Yeah, I was like, "I am not gonna meet anybody. I have to work at this." And it was not so fun, but the moment I saw him, the first thought that I had in my head was, "He looks like he makes sense to me." That was my first thought. This is kinda funny.
Good head on his shoulders. Looks like a guy that earns a living and has his life together. And
Yeah, although
that.
at that point, I was nannying, he was working for REI. Like, it was just one of those young people influx portions of life, right? Which meant we had a lot of time to spend together. So,
Okay.
yeah, I think our first date was like 12 hours long.
Oh,
Yeah. So we hit it off okay.
immersion experience.
Yes, it was a little bit. It was a little bit. Yeah. So we dated, and his family lives in Atlanta, which is why
He's a native there. Yeah.
well, his family is military. So Daryl was actually born in Germany. And then he's lived in Japan. He lived in, I think, Montana at some point. But they moved all over. But because his mom's family was in Atlanta, they often ended up back up there as a base.
It's kind of a little bit of a home base for him. Yeah.
Yeah, I can
Military
sure.
families don't really have
Mm-mm.
they which kind of fit your vibe a little bit. I mean, he was probably not shocked by the way you've
No,
moved around. That's kind of normal for him.
no, he was very used to that sort of thing. And he was still in National Guard when I met him. So he was Navy Reserves before that, working at REI, and then National Guard, and then continuing at REI. And then he was like, "Oh no, I want to marry this girl. I got to find a real."
You start to look at life differently, when you have
Yeah.
a relationship.
Anyway, so but all during that time, he introduced me to his group of friends who really became hugely important in my life from that point on.
And he's a I mean, Daryl's dad is ministry
Yes.
too.
Yeah.
So it's like two PKs,
Mhm.
preacher's kids, or
Yes.
TOs, theological offspring, however, whatever you want to call them,
Yep.
finding one another. So that's another interesting,
But his dad's Presbyterian. Yeah, so he would
which is like whatever the opposite of Pentecostal is.
He's Presbyterian.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Frozen shows.
yeah, that's what I was thinking.
I've met Daryl's dad. I really, really like his dad. He's yeah. So
It's fun.
he's been great to have here as
Yeah, so we met, and he got a grown-up job that he didn't like, but he wanted to get married, so we did that. And we joined a church plant in Atlanta. And it was a reformed church plant, which was kind of different.
well.
Again,
This is an Acts 29 church.
yes, and
Which is,
yeah.
yeah. So,
And so we were there for the entire time that we were married, until we left Lilburn and came up to Illinois. What really made that transition happen was, so I was working in Lilburn, which is an eastern suburb
Mhm.
of Atlanta, and I worked at a conservatory for the arts. So I was the director of all of our high school conservatory programs, and we had media arts, literary arts, dance, um, the dramatic arts, and music. Like we had it all. And I was actually telling Lonnie before this, I was like, I was watching a trailer for a movie and realized that's my student. And I was like, all right, that's cool. So lots of them have gone on to do amazing things. That makes you feel good as a teacher. I don't know if it had anything to do with me, but it's
so that's the other string: education and the arts.
yeah,
And
yeah,
and so when you and Daryl, I think you moved this area because of Daryl's work, right?
yeah,
He working at the arsenal,
yeah.
FEMA, and then
Uh,
came to this area.
well, he actually worked for the state of Georgia, and he was the weapons of mass destruction coordinator.
Uh, the only weapons of mass destruction coordinator I know. I didn't know you could have a state level mass
I guess you can.
handling. We won't ask him about it. He's got one of these government jobs. You probably shouldn't ask him questions.
Yeah, probably not that one.
My son's got one of those.
Yeah. So, but also when we were there for a long time, I was the worship director at our church, down at it's called Resonate.
This is the new church.
That was the church plant one. Yep. So I did that until I had, I think Lillian. So we have two kids, Titus, who is 10, and Lillian, who is 8. So I think I did that until I had Lillian, and then I just moved straight over to just teaching and directing and doing that kind of stuff at the school. But what was really hard for us is that during all of COVID, Daryl was deployed. So he was in Roswell, which is technically not far away from Lilburn, but if you think about Atlanta traffic and the corridor that he would have to drive to go between the two.
It's the trap.
Yeah, so he was only home on weekends for 18 months. And Titus and Lillian were little, and everybody was isolated. And we had fun. We had fun, but also hard. It's just real hard. And he also wasn't enjoying his job because his job wasn't his normal job. He was basically just doing PPE deliveries and warehouse at one of those secret locations. So he was like, I want something different. So that's what propelled him to start looking, and then how he landed at the job that's at the Arsenal. And then we came up together. And I was like, man, I must really love you. I'm leaving one of my dream jobs, not knowing I was going to have 2 amazing jobs once I moved up here. Yeah. So then
I remember you guys showing up for the first time and just so happy you connected here. And so you've been involved in worship ministry at Kingswood. I mean, you've been like when we needed an interim, you've stepped in, and I know when we were looking for a worship director at a previous time, I said, Whitney, you're right here, and you were like, God's called me to teach, it's like, it was really clear. You had a real
Yeah.
sense of direction
Yeah.
at that point. So, okay,
Yeah.
and I'm sure you remember that conversation.
I do. I do. And I remember thinking that I I don't know, like I felt like that was what I was supposed to be doing. I needed to finish that degree. I was doing another master's degree at the time, and so it
Second
was
master.
teaching in music. And I was like, I need to finish this. I need to do this. But now being in this job, I was like, I feel set up. Like I feel like the Lord was like, okay, I need you to have a few more skills, is particularly in regards to music that you don't currently have to get you prepared for this, what I had for you next. And I really feel like that's what he did with teaching because I don't learn by just hearing something. Like I need to do it. So if you're teaching music, you're doing it,
Yeah.
right? Like you're in all of its forms with all of its instruments. I mean, during that master's program, I had to learn to play 5 different instruments. And so I am really thankful for the way that I feel like the Lord has set me up
Yeah, that's what
to be.
because I hear your story. I just all these different things, the prayer. Some people don't know what a 24/7 prayer room is, but it's literally what it sounds like. It's a church community that's set up around. Let's have uh, there's constantly new prayer and worship going
Uh-huh.
on at all times, and people kind of flow in and out as they can. But it's keep fire lit all the time, and
Hmm.
really have a foundation in prayer, the arts, music background, acting, all and church leadership, teaching. It seems like all those pieces are kind of brought together in this director of worship
They
role
really
at
are.
Kingswood.
Right.
And I was really thrilled when we were looking and because I got it was such a firm no before. I was like, I know I'm doing this. Okay. And to see that, God was preparing the way, that was really a cool thing. So, we're in some ways just getting started here. You've had your first Holy Week as our full time. You came on full time January. You were
Mhm.
part time for a little bit there,
Yeah.
doing both roles. Left your day job, left your teaching role. I know that was
It was
heartstrings.
hard, but it was good, but it was hard.
And we may not be really popular in that school district because we stole you away. Hopefully, there's no hard feelings. But now that you're in this role, I mean, I know we've got some people listening that are already part of the worship ministry. Maybe some people that are, they've got some talent and they're kind of in the pews and like, I don't, maybe someday. So, what would you say to the congregation as far as from your seat as our director of worship? Where are we going and what do you need
Yeah.
and how can we be praying for you?
Yes. Join us is the first thing that I would say. Whether, somebody wants to serve on the technical side with Lonnie or if somebody wants to serve on the performance side with me, there are lots of opportunities. We have an amazing dynamic here that I love that it basically says if it's a Jesus music thing, we're doing it, and I love that about this congregation.
You're not a slave to stuff. There's that old
Mm-mm.
temporary, this is traditional.
Yeah.
You're not a slave to those categories.
No, I'm like, let's make it about Jesus and let's do it, or let's not do it if it's not about him. Like what one way or the other.
Content over stuff.
Yes, very much so. Yeah. But we have lots of opportunities to serve. Obviously, there's the worship band, but then there's choirs, and you can do choir all season long, or you can do it for just Christmas or Easter. There's also our bell choir serving with our band. There's the worship welcome team, like the people who pray for our offertory
Kind
stuff.
of a new thing.
Mhm.
Sometimes people that worship with us may have seen people pop up to kind of pray for the offering and that kind of thing.
Mhm.
And that's an effort to we've got a lot of folks that have leadership talent, like to be in front of a group that maybe aren't musical.
Mhm.
So just folks we want in prayer warriors that we went up,
Yeah. Yeah.
leading. So that's kind of a new ministry. So you're the one that scheduled
Mhm.
those. And if somebody has that gift and I could do that, I
Yeah.
would like to do that,
Mhm.
talk to Whitney, right?
Yeah. Or if Lightkeepers is your thing and you wanna help with design aspects of the church, there's lots of different ways to serve. Um,
So we need Kingswood, don't we, to be just a place where worship and the arts are just have a natural flow. It's just kind of
Yes.
bursting with creativity in life and people using their gifts to the glory of God because God's a creative God and
Yeah.
worship ought to involve all of our senses and all of our
Absolutely.
creativity, right? I think that's your
Absolutely.
vibe, right?
Yes.
You bring to
Yeah.
our
Yeah.
worship ministry. And I know when you came on, you said, I am not the tech person. You know, sometimes we've blended those roles.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a full-time tech director now too that does those. And he's a big part of, he's our director, our producer
Mm-hmm.
here behind the camera. And by the way, he's reminding us of the time we're at time. But we're really interested in seeing what God's going to do. So I don't know. Maybe we'll just pray as we close.
Yeah.
Anything else you were wanting to say that you didn't get a chance to say?
There is just one new thing that's coming up that is totally new for us, and is again just a thing that I love and I wanted to do it, and so we're doing it. 4 times this summer, we are offering a little class called Little Inklings.
Blink.
Little Inklings. Now, do you know what that name's from?
Well, inkling. A little idea. Is that
Yeah,
so-
yeah. Do you remember Tolkien and C.S. Lewis and Dorothy Sayers had a
Oh, that
group?
was his.
That was the
They were
Inklings.
the inklings. Yeah,
This
that's
is
right.
Little Inklings. We're going to train you in thought and in art and in faith, right? Like
This
this.
sounds like the University of St. Andrews coming out here.
Yes.
Teach them how to think.
Yeah, but this is for first grade to as young as you want because it's not a drop off. It's a come with your kid sort of thing. But we're gonna learn about Jesus through reading some amazing books about him. I want to do some sensory activities that will double down on those ideas, and then we'll do some music activities. Because we want to start it young, right?
Yeah, and I know you have a heart for like neurodivergence. That like our minds work different. We're doing this series on the mind right now. Minds work different ways, and some people need to do not just doesn't need to be
Mhm.
rote. It needs to be sensory
Yep.
and experiential.
Yeah.
And so that's how a lot of people learn and experience God too, is through those things.
Mhm.
So very good. So watch for information in print on Inklings, little Inklings,
Little Inklings.
and it's for elementary age. Is that kind of
First grade and under.
first grade and under? So young.
Younger.
Very cool.
Yep.
All right. Well, pastors don't know how to end something except by praying, and we're a church built on prayer. So let's just pray and ask God's blessing upon Whitney. Lord, thank you so much for our worship ministry and for all that you're doing right now. Lord, thank you for the servant that leads our worship ministry. And as we kind of go through her life story, we see how you've uniquely prepared her for this role. So God, we pray that your Holy Spirit would just be strong in this church. Help us, Lord, to pull from the well of prayer and worship and let it be a foundation for everything we do. And we thank you for how you work through Whitney's life and through her family. Lord, bless her marriage, bless her kids. I know it's always a busy season and a busy time in their lives. God, right now with ages of the kids, thank you, Lord, that she's able to lead this ministry with such focus in the midst of all that. Thank you for Lonnie as well, who's scheduling our podcast and producing this, getting it ready to share. Bless his gifts as well. Lord, we pray that gospel, spirit, and mission would be the heart of everything we do at Kingswood Church. Keep us focused, Lord, in Jesus' holy name. Amen.
Amen.
Well, thank you, friends. So glad you joined us for our podcast today. And watch for future episodes. We're going to try to do this every other week or so. So you'll see new episodes drop in the future. We've got a lineup of folks we're going to interview and talk to about some great topics. God bless you.